Good morning, students. Welcome to Lesson 107, April 29th. All right, today we are talking about percents. We are using percents to name part of a group. So a percent is a word that means out of 100. If you read that 50% of all Americans drive cars, we understand that 50 out of 100 Americans drive cars. Likewise, the statement 10% of the population is left-handed, that means that 10 out of 100 people are left-handed. So I want you to pay attention to this over here. This would be 1%, which would be 1 over 100. We've talked about this when we were talking about pennies even yesterday, when we had 2 pennies out of $1. That would be 2%, right? So 50% is 50 over 100, 100% is 100 over 100, and 125% is 125 over 100. All right, so when we're thinking about percents, we need to think about the denominator of 100, correct? So if 8 of the 20 students are boys, what percent of the students are boys? So here we have 8 over 20. We need to get it to 100. So just as I have shown you before, we're looking now for a denominator of 100. So we need to find the equivalent fraction. All right, so this means that we need to multiply times 5. 20 times 5 is 100, so we would do 8 times 5, and that equals 40. And so 40% of the students were boys. All right, the next problem, example 2. If there are 400 beads in all, if 60 of the beads were red, what percent of the beads were red? So we have 60 out of 400. We are going the opposite direction this time. So we have the total, we need to get to 100, right? So we are finding the percent that are red. We are taking 400 and we are dividing it by 4 to get to the denominator of 100. So then we divide 60 by 4 and we get 15. And so 15% of the beads were red. All right. So some fractions are not easily renamed as parts of 100. Just as we look at here, 6 does not evenly go into 100, correct? So we need to think about what we can do to be able to still find the percent. And we have actually done some of this before. Since 100 is not a multiple of 6, there is no whole number by which we can multiply the numerator and the denominator of 6 to rename it with the denominator of 100. So the first thing that we do is we take 1/6 times 100%. We get 100 over 6. Then we divide the 100 by 6, and we get 16 2/3. 16 2/3. All right, so it says down here, explain how to write a quotient and a remainder as a mixed number. Well, you already know that. You are good at that. So we find that 1/6 is equal to 16 2/3. In our next example, the team won 2/3 of the games. Find the percent of games the team won. So the first we multiply the 2/3 by 100%. Correct? Because 3 does not evenly go into 100. So we get 200% over 3. Then we divide the 200% by the 3 and write its quotient as a mixed number. Now I know, because just from our discussion yesterday, that some of you already have what 2/3 is in a percent. 66 2/3. All right, so the team won 66 2/3 of the games. All right, here we go. We have our lesson practice. Now, I have it in 2 formats today. I have written it out so that we can do the calculations together. And I have it on the iPad. So, let's talk through this. If 120 of the 200 students are girls, then what percent of the students are girls? So, I need to go from, I'm going to slide my iPad up, I don't want to write on that, 120 of 200. So in order to get there, this number is larger. The 200 is larger. So I need to find the denominator of 100, so I need to divide these two numbers, all right? I need to think about what could I divide by to get me to 100? So I'm going to divide both of these by 2. All right, 200 divided by 2 is 100. 120 divided by 2 is 60, correct? So my percent of students that are girls would be 60% of the students are girls, correct? All right, I need to give myself a little more space. So I had 120 of the students were girls, 120 out of 200. I needed to divide that because I needed to find the percent, I needed to get to a denominator of 100. And there we go, 60%. Now, my next question is, if 10 of the 50 apples are green, then what percent of the apples are green? So this time I'm going to get to my denominator, which is going to be 100 now. So this time I need to multiply to get to the 100. So I'm multiplying both of these numbers by 2 because I need to get to that denominator of 100, and 50 times 2 is 100. Then 10 times 2 is 20, and that means that my percent will be 20%. All right, now my next question is 60 out of 300 is equivalent to how many out of 100? So here we go again. I got another large denominator, right? So I need to divide both of these. I think about how many times 100 goes into 300, and that tells me I need to divide both of these by 3, correct? So I divide 300 by 3 and I get 100. I divide 60 by 3 and I get 20. And there we go. My percent will be 20%, correct? The next problem is going from it's actually not a percent because you're finding how many apples. It's 20. My next problem will be going from, let's see, C is 48 out of 200 is what percent? All right, so I have a 200 for my denominator and I have a 48 for my numerator. So I need to find out 48 out of 200. Well, guess what? I need to divide. To go from the larger number to the smaller number, I'm going to need to divide. So I'm dividing both of these by 2. That 2 needs to be redone. Okay, 200 divided by 2 is 100. 48 divided by 2 is 24. So I will have 24%. All right, now my next problem, E says 30 out of 50 is what percent? Now I think these are kind of fun to figure out. So 30 out of 50, I'm going from a smaller number to a larger number, so I'm going to multiply. I know that 50 times 2 is 100, so here we go. 30 times 2 is 60. So 60% is my answer for that one. Now, F is if half of the people ate lunch, then what percent of the people ate lunch? I know that the majority of you have this memorized. It will be 50. Oh, let's go back to my pencil. 50% of the people ate lunch, correct? All right, now our next problem has a few more pieces to it. So I am actually just going to do this one on the paper, okay? So 5 minutes is 1/12 of an hour. 5 minutes is what percent of an hour? So 5 minutes is 1/12 of an hour. 5 minutes is what percent of an hour? So guess what? I actually will have the fraction of 5 over 60, correct? So I'm going to do this on my piece of paper. 5 over 60. All right, because 5 minutes, and this is actually, 5 minutes of 60 minutes. All right. Now, 60 does not evenly and nicely go into 100. So I know that I need to multiply this times 100%, right? So 5 times 100 is 500. And 60 for my 60 minutes in an hour is going to stay like that. So now I need to divide, right? So I need to divide 500 by 60. All right, so 6 goes into 50. Doesn't, so we need to go, 6 goes into 500. So let's think about this. 6 would go into close to 50, would be about 8 times, correct? So I'm going to put my 8 there. 0 times 8 is 0. 6 times 8 is 48, right? So I'm going to subtract. 0 subtract 0 is 0. Now I need to regroup. So I have 10 subtract 8 is 2. So my fraction would be 8 and 20/60. And there we go, 8 and 20/60%. But guess what? I'm not done because I need to reduce, right? So I have my 20/60, and I need to divide that, correct? So what goes into both of those? Well, I'm going to jump right away. I could divide them both by 10. Then I get 2/6, but I'm going to divide them both by 30. Not by 30, by 20. I'm going to divide them both by 20 so that I can quickly get to my fraction. 20 divided by 20 equals 1. Oops. And 60 divided by 20 equals 3. So 5/60 is 8 and 1/3%. All right. Thank you. Have a great day. Your mystery word for today is bus.